Most people think a Kennedy $50 is just an old, forgotten coin sitting in a drawer worth exactly 50 cents and nothing more. But some of these coins are hiding secrets that could be worth thousands of dollars. Welcome back to Coins Info Vault, the channel where old, dusty coins turn out to be hidden treasures. Today, we are counting down 5 rare Kennedy $50, coins that might be sitting in an old coin jar, a drawer, or even your grandparents' coin collection right now. We will show you the real history, the hidden details, and just how much these coins could actually be worth. Stay until the end, because the final coin on this list might just be the most surprising one of all. Now, let's start with the first coin. This next coin might look scratched, dull, and a little beaten up, but do not judge it too fast, because this coin is actually part silver, and that alone changes everything. This is the 1967 Kennedy $50, no mint mark, circulated, with scratches across Kennedy's cheek and tunning built up around the rim. It looks like just another old 50-cent piece. But there is real, physical silver sitting quietly inside this coin, and most people have absolutely no idea. Let's go back in time for a moment, back to 1964, when the Kennedy $50 was first introduced, just months after President John F. Kennedy's assassination. The coin was created almost overnight as a tribute to a president the entire country was mourning, and the American public embraced it instantly. But there was a problem. Silver prices were rising fast, and people started hoarding these coins the moment they were released, pulling them out of circulation, because they knew the silver inside was worth more than the coin's face value. So starting in 1965, the US Mint made a change. They reduced the silver content from 90% down to 40%, mixing it with copper, creating what collectors now call a silver-clad coin. By 1967, this 40% silver formula was still in use, which means this exact coin, sitting scratched and toned in someone's coin jar right now, still contains real, genuine silver. Now let's look at the coin's design. On the front, President John F. Kennedy in a dignified, forward-facing portrait, a design so respected it has remained largely unchanged for decades. On the back, the presidential seal, a bold eagle, wings spread, clutching an olive branch and arrows, symbols of both peace and strength. This particular coin has scratches across Kennedy's cheek, on the obverse, along with tunning gathered around the rim, a natural darkening that happens over time, as silver reacts slowly with air and moisture. The tunning is not damage, it is simply age, sitting right there on the surface, decades in the making. Now here is something most people completely overlook, the actual silver value hiding inside this coin. Even in scratched, heavily circulated condition, this coin still contains its original 40% silver content, roughly 147 thousandths of an ounce of pure silver. Which means, regardless of scratches, regardless of tunning, regardless of how rough this coin looks, it carries real, tangible melt value based purely on current silver prices, sitting well above its 50-cent face value every single day. Let's talk about condition and rarity for a moment, because this matters more than people realize. A heavily scratched, circulated 1967 $50 like this one is common in terms of overall production numbers. Millions were struck that year. But here is the twist. Most of these coins have already been pulled out of circulation, melted down, or locked away in silver stackers' collections, meaning fewer and fewer genuine, identifiable 1967 silver halves remain in everyday circulation today. Every year, that number shrinks a little more. So let's talk value, because this is where things get exciting. In its current scratched circulated condition, this coin's silver content alone, based on typical silver market pricing, gives it a melt value of roughly $5 to $6, already 10 times its printed face value, just sitting there in raw material worth. But well-preserved examples, with strong, sharp Kennedy detailing and minimal wear, have sold for $8 to $15 among silver coin collectors. And in exceptional, uncirculated condition, certified by PCGS or NGC, certain 1967 silver Kennedy halves have reached auction prices of $35 to $75, simply because collectors want a clean, well-struck example from this transitional silver era. Just think about that for a second. A coin most people would spend without a second thought or leave sitting in an old jar for decades is actually worth 10 times, sometimes 50 times, more than its printed value just because of the metal it is made from. So if you have any old Kennedy half dollars at home, check the date. If it says 1965 through 1970, you are likely holding real silver, sitting quietly in your hand, worth far more than 50 cents. Now moving on to the next coin, and this one marks the end of an era, a quiet, important shift in American coinage that most people never even noticed happening. This is the 1971 D. Kennedy half dollar struck at the Denver Mint, and this coin represents the very first year that Kennedy half dollars were made without any silver at all. Let's rewind for a moment and understand why that matters so much. Remember, back in the mid-1960s, silver prices were climbing fast, and the US Mint had already reduced the silver content in these coins once before, dropping it down to 40% back in 1965. But by the end of the decade, silver prices kept rising and rising until the Mint made a final decision. Starting in 1971, Kennedy half dollars would be struck using a copper-nickel clad composition, the same basic material used in dimes and quarters, completely removing silver from the coin once and for all. So this coin, this 1971 D half dollar, sitting in someone's coin jar right now, represents a genuine turning point, the moment this coin stopped being precious metal and became purely a coin of commerce instead. Now let's talk about that little letter D stamped right on the coin, because mint marks matter a lot more than most beginners realize. That D tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of several facilities across the country producing coins for everyday circulation. Understanding mint marks is actually one of the very first skills every coin collector needs to learn, because production numbers can vary significantly between different mints in the exact same year. A coin struck in Denver might be common, while a coin struck at a different facility in that same year could be considerably scarcer, simply because fewer were made there. For the 1971 D half dollar specifically, the Denver Mint actually produced these coins in extremely high numbers, well over 200 million coins that year, making it, by design, a very common, easy-to-find coin in typical circulated condition. Now let's look closely at the coin's design. On the front, President John F. Kennedy, in that same dignified, respected portrait, used since the coin's very first release back in 1964. On the back, the presidential seal, that powerful eagle, wings spread wide, clutching an olive branch in one talon and a bundle of arrows in the other, representing America's desire for peace, balanced against its readiness for strength. The coin itself has that classic copper-nickel color, a silvery gray tone on the outer layers with a visible copper-colored stripe running along the coin's edge. A simple, quick way to identify a clad coin without even needing a scale or magnet. Let's talk about condition now, because this coin is described as a circulated example, meaning it has clearly been used, spent, and handled, moving through cash registers, pockets, and coin jars for years. Because of that high mintage number we mentioned earlier, over 200 million coins, a standard circulated 1971 D half dollar in typical worn condition is honestly one of the most common coins in this entire series. And I want to be upfront with you here, because that is what we do on this channel. We do not exaggerate, we do not oversell. A basic, well-worn 1971 D half dollar, by itself, in ordinary condition, is usually only worth its face value, 50 cents, maybe a small premium of $1 or $2, to a very casual buyer. But stay with me, because here is where the story gets interesting, because value in coin collecting is never just about one single coin sitting alone. It is about condition, it is about rarity within specific grades, and it is about errors, mistakes made during the minting process that can turn an otherwise common coin into something collectors actively hunt for. You see, even with such a massive mintage number, the sheer volume of coins produced in 1971 actually increased the chances of production errors slipping through quality control. Some 1971 half dollars have been found with double die errors, where the design elements, particularly the lettering or Kennedy's portrait itself, appear subtly doubled, almost like a shadow sitting just behind the main image. Others show off-center strikes, where the coin's design sits noticeably shifted away from the center of the blank metal disc, sometimes dramatically so, and a small number have even been found struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the coin was accidentally stamped onto a blank metal disc, intended for a completely different denomination, creating a genuinely rare and highly collectible mistake. Now here is something incredibly important that I need every single person watching this video to understand clearly. If you have old Kennedy half dollars sitting at home, never clean them. I know the temptation is real, looking at a dull, tarnished coin, wanting to make it shine again, wanting it to look fresh and new. But please, resist that urge completely. Cleaning a coin, even gently, with something as simple as a soft cloth or mild soap and water, strips away its original surface. And in the world of coin collecting, that original surface is everything. A cleaned coin loses value almost instantly, sometimes losing more than half of what it could have been worth, and experienced collectors or professional grading services can spot a cleaned coin almost immediately under simple magnification. So let's talk numbers, because this is where things get genuinely interesting. A standard circulated 1971 half dollar in ordinary worn condition with no confirmed errors is realistically only worth its face value, 50 cents, to $1 or $2 to the average buyer. That is simply the honest reality for the vast majority of these coins, given how many were originally produced. But coins confirmed to carry a genuine double die error, verified by an experienced numismatist or a trusted grading service, have sold for $75 to $250 among collectors specializing in modern era coins. And coins showing a dramatic off-center strike, especially examples where the error is clearly visible and significant, have reached auction prices of $200 to $500. In rare documented cases where a 1971 half dollar is confirmed to be struck on the wrong planchet entirely, these extraordinary mint errors have sold for well over $1,000 at specialist coin auctions, for a coin that most people would have spent without a second glance decades ago. Now, if you believe you might have a valuable 1971 half dollar sitting somewhere at home, here is exactly what you should do. First, do not clean it. We have already covered why that is a critical mistake. Second, examine it closely, using a simple magnifying glass, checking Kennedy's portrait and the lettering around the rim for anything that looks doubled, shifted, or unusual. Third, store the coin safely in a proper coin holder, away from moisture and heat. And fourth, if you genuinely believe it might carry an error, send it to a trusted grading service, like PCGS or NGC. They will authenticate the coin, confirm the error, and assign it an official grade, which makes an enormous difference when it comes time to sell. From there, you can list the coin through a reputable coin dealer, a specialized numismatic auction house, or a trusted online marketplace built specifically for serious collectors, rather than accepting pennies on the dollar from someone who has no idea what they are actually looking at. This 1971 half dollar marks the quiet end of an era, the last major shift in how these coins were made, and even though millions of them are sitting in drawers, jars, and old collections across the country right now, a small, overlooked mistake made decades ago on a factory floor in Denver could still be hiding inside one of them, waiting patiently for someone to finally take a closer look. But the next coin is where things get even more interesting. Picture this for a second. A coin pulled from an old cigar box, deep scratches running across the front, the surface dulled down to a flat satin-like finish from years and years of being spent over and over again. Most people would take one look and put it right back where they found it. This is the 1973 Kennedy half dollar, no mint mark, and I want to walk you through why a coin looking this rough, this used, this forgotten, still deserves a second look. Let's start with the mint mark question, because it actually tells a specific story here. No mint mark on a coin from this era means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the original home of American coin production. Philadelphia, back in 1973, was producing half dollars purely for everyday commerce, gas stations, grocery stores, banks handing them out in rolls, nothing fancy, nothing collectible by design. These coins were meant to work, meant to circulate, meant to move through the economy, exactly the way this one clearly did. Now 1973 itself sits in a strange, often overlooked stretch of American coin history. The big, exciting silver years were already gone by this point, and the massive celebration of the bicentennial $50 was still a few years away, which means coins from 1973 kind of get lost in the middle, overshadowed by their more famous neighbors. And that is exactly the kind of gap smart collectors love to explore because everybody else tends to skip right past it. Let's talk about what you are actually looking at on this coin. Kennedy's portrait sits on the front, but here it carries deep scratches cutting across the surface, along with a satin-like wear pattern spread across the fields, that flat background area surrounding his image. That satin texture is not the same as a shiny, polished look. It happens naturally when a coin rubs against other coins and surfaces repeatedly over years of handling, slowly smoothing down the metal's original texture. On the back, the presidential seal remains, the eagle, wings extended, gripping the olive branch and arrows, though on a heavily worn example like this, some of the finer feather detailing has softened considerably. Material-wise, remember, by 1973, silver was completely gone from these coins, replaced entirely by that copper-nickel clad composition we discussed with the previous coin. So this coin's value is not sitting in its metal content, the way that earlier 1967 silver $50 was. Instead, its value, if it has any beyond face value at all, comes purely from condition, rarity within specific grades, and any confirmed errors hiding in the details. And here is where this coin's story actually gets interesting. Philadelphia's production numbers for 1973, while still substantial, were noticeably lower than what Denver was cranking out that same year. Fewer coins produced generally means fewer high-quality survivors remain today, especially once you start filtering for coins in genuinely well-preserved condition. A heavily scratched, satin-worn example, like the one we are describing, will not command much on its own, but it helps illustrate exactly how much wear the average circulating $50 from this exact year actually experienced. Now let's talk about errors, because 1973 quietly produced a few interesting ones. Some Philadelphia-struck $50 from this year show a repunched mint mark characteristic, an odd inclusion, since this particular coin has no mint mark, but more commonly, collectors search for double-die varieties, where Kennedy's profile or the surrounding lettering appears to have a subtle, ghost-like duplication, sitting just slightly offset from the primary design. There have also been documented examples of clipped planchet errors from this general production period, where the blank metal disc used to strike the coin was accidentally cut incorrectly before minting, leaving the finished coin with a curved, bite-shaped chunk missing from its edge. Here is something worth remembering whenever you are examining an old coin like this one. Never attempt to polish away those deep scratches or try to smooth out that satin wear using any kind of cleaner, cloth, or abrasive material. I know it is tempting, looking at a dull, damaged surface, wanting to restore some of that original shine, but doing so permanently alters the coin's original surface, and once altered, it can never be undone. Collectors and professional grading services are trained specifically to detect cleaned or polished coins, and once flagged, that coin's potential value drops dramatically, sometimes to almost nothing. So let's get into the numbers, because even a rough-looking coin like this has a real range worth understanding. A standard heavily circulated 1973 $50, deeply scratched, with satin field wear, exactly like the one we are describing, realistically sits right around its face value, 50 cents, maybe $1 to a casual buyer who just wants a piece from that specific year. Coins in better preserved condition, showing sharper Kennedy detailing and minimal surface disturbance, have sold for $5 to $15 among collectors building complete date sets. But confirmed double-die examples, verified by an experienced grading service, have reached auction prices of $150 to $400. And clipped planchet errors, particularly dramatic, well-documented examples, have sold for $200 to over $600 at dedicated era coin auctions. If you are holding a coin like this right now, worn, scratched, unremarkable at first glance, here is the honest truth. Most of them really are just 50-cent pieces, but every single one deserves a closer look under decent lighting with a simple magnifying glass, because somewhere mixed in among millions of ordinary coins, a genuine era is still out there quietly waiting in someone's coin jar. Now the story shifts, because our next coin tells a very different tale, one of preservation instead of wear. Now the story shifts because this coin tells a completely different tale, one of preservation instead of wear. This is the 1973 D. Kennedy $half, struck at the Denver Mint and graded as choice extra fine to about uncirculated, which in simple terms means this coin somehow managed to survive decades of circulation while still holding onto sharp, crisp detail and a surface that looks remarkably close to the day it left the mint. Let's think about this for a second, because it is actually pretty remarkable. This coin was struck the same year as the rough, scratched-up 1973 $half we just talked about. Same year, same design, same composition, but somehow this particular coin took a completely different path through life. Maybe it sat quietly in someone's dresser drawer, pulled out of a roll and set aside almost by accident. Maybe it was handled carefully by someone who simply liked the way it looked. Whatever happened, this coin avoided the rough treatment that millions of its identical siblings went through, and that is exactly why it stands out today. Now let's talk mint marks again, because this small letter D, stamped right on the coin, tells us it came from Denver, and Denver in 1973 was producing $half in significantly higher volume than Philadelphia that same year. On paper, that should make this coin less special, more common, easier to find. But here is the twist: high mintage numbers only tell part of the story. What actually matters for a coin like this is not how many were made, it is how many survived in this exact, well-preserved condition. And the honest truth is that very few circulated $half from any mint in any year during the 1970s managed to avoid heavy wear entirely. Let's look closely at what makes this coin's condition so special. The term choice extra fine describes a coin that shows light, even wear across its highest points: Kennedy's cheek, his hair detail, the eagle's wings on the back, but critically the overall design remains sharp, bold, and clearly defined. Moving up to about uncirculated means the coin sits right on the edge of looking essentially untouched, with only the faintest trace of handling visible under close inspection. For a coin struck in 1973, and clearly used, at least to some degree, holding onto this level of detail is genuinely uncommon. On the front, Kennedy's portrait remains crisp, his profile clearly defined, the lettering surrounding him easy to read without the softening and blurring we saw on our previous coin. On the back, that presidential seal, the eagle's feathers individually distinguishable, the olive branch and arrows held firmly in sharp relief. The coin's copper-nickel clad surface still carries a decent amount of its original luster, that subtle, silvery shine that most circulated coins lose almost entirely within just a few years of handling. Now here is something collectors pay very close attention to when it comes to coins graded in this specific range. There is a real meaningful jump in value between a coin that is merely fine or very fine, showing moderate wear, and a coin that reaches choice extra fine to about uncirculated. That jump exists because so few coins from common, everyday circulation years like 1973 actually survive at this level. Most people were not thinking about preservation back then, they were thinking about spending their money, which means high-grade survivors from ordinary years are becoming increasingly difficult for collectors to track down. Let's also touch on errors here, because even well-preserved coins can carry production mistakes. Some 1973 D $half in this exact grade range have been identified with subtle dye polish lines, faint hairline marks left behind when the mint's dyes, meaning the tools used to stamp each coin, were polished and cleaned between production runs. While not as dramatic as a double dye or an off-center strike, these dye polish varieties still attract dedicated collectors who specialize in cataloging every small variation within a specific date and mint combination. I want to remind you again, because this point matters so much, especially with a coin this well preserved. Never clean this coin under any circumstances. That original natural luster sitting on its surface right now is exactly what makes it valuable, and any attempt to polish it or make it shine even brighter will destroy that surface permanently, stripping away the very quality that separates this coin from an ordinary circulated example. Now let's talk about value, because this is where a coin like this really starts to shine. A standard circulated 1973 D half dollar, showing typical moderate wear, is usually only worth its face value, 50 cents, to maybe $2 or $3 to a casual buyer. But a coin graded, choice extra fine to about uncirculated, exactly like this one, regularly sells for $20 to $50 among collectors, specifically seeking high-grade examples from common date years. And coins that cross fully into uncirculated condition, certified by PCGS or NGC, with strong, documented luster, have reached auction prices of $75 to $150. In select cases, where a coin combines this exceptional preservation with a confirmed die variety, values have climbed even further, reaching $200 to $400 at specialist coin auctions. Think about that difference for a moment. Two coins, struck in the exact same year, at the exact same mint, one worth barely more than its face value, the other worth up to 800 times more, simply because of how carefully it was handled over the past 50 years. If you are searching through old coin rolls or a forgotten collection at home, this is exactly the kind of coin you want to keep an eye out for. Not the flashiest, not the rarest by production numbers, but the ones that somehow quietly escaped the wear and damage that claimed almost all of their identical siblings. And this final coin might just be the most exciting one on this entire list. Because it does not just tell the story of a single year, it tells the story of an entire nation celebrating 200 years of independence. This is the Bicentennial 1776-1976 Kennedy half dollar, struck at the Denver Mint, lightly circulated, featuring one of the most beloved and instantly recognizable coin designs in American history. Let's set the stage for a moment, because 1976 was not just another ordinary production year. The entire country was gearing up for the 200th anniversary of American independence, and the U.S. Mint wanted to mark the occasion properly. So starting in 1975, they made a bold decision. Every quarter, half dollar and dollar coin produced would carry a special dual date, 1776 to 1976, right on the front, and a brand new, one-time only design on the back, honoring the nation's founding. For the half dollar specifically, they chose something powerful, an image of Independence Hall standing proudly in Philadelphia, the very building where the Declaration of Independence was signed 2 centuries earlier. Now here is where I need you to slow down with me for a second, because this coin's story is not just about its design, it is about what happened the moment these coins were released into the world. People did not just spend them like ordinary pocket change. They saved them. They held onto them. Grandparents tucked them away for grandchildren not yet born. Families kept them as keepsakes from a once-in-a-generation national celebration. Which means, unlike so many other coins we have talked about today, worn down, scratched, faded from years of hard circulation, a huge number of bicentennial half dollars were protected right from the very beginning. Let's look closely at the coin itself. On the front, you still see Kennedy's familiar portrait, but look carefully at the date. Instead of a single year, you will find those 2 dates, side by side, 1776 and 1976, a small but powerful detail that instantly sets this coin apart from every other Kennedy half dollar ever made. On the back, that stunning image of Independence Hall, its clock tower, rising tall and detailed, surrounded by the words, 200 years of freedom. It is a design unlike anything else in this entire series, made for exactly one purpose: to celebrate a single, unforgettable moment in American history. This particular coin is lightly circulated, meaning it shows only gentle, minimal wear, the kind of wear you would expect from a coin handled carefully, and occasionally rather than spent aggressively day after day. Kennedy's portrait remains sharp. Independence Hall's fine architectural details, the columns, the windows, the clock tower itself, all remain clearly visible, telling us clearly this coin was treated with real care throughout its entire life. Now I want you to stay with me, because this is where things are about to get genuinely fascinating. You see, even though hundreds of millions of bicentennial half-dollars were produced, making the coin itself extremely common in basic circulated grades, a very small percentage carry something far rarer, hiding in plain sight. A confirmed group of bicentennial half-dollars were accidentally struck using leftover 40% silver planchets, the same silver blanks used for special collector editions, mixed in, by mistake, with the standard copper-nickel production run. These silver-era strikes are exceptionally rare, and because they look almost identical to ordinary bicentennial halves, at a casual glance, they have slipped through, completely unnoticed, for decades, sitting in coin jars, old collections, and forgotten drawers all across the country. Take a breath, because we are getting close now. A standard, lightly circulated bicentennial half-dollar, exactly matching the coin we are describing, typically sells for $1 to $3 among casual buyers and beginning collectors, slightly above face value simply for its historical significance. Well-preserved, uncirculated examples with strong, documented luster have reached $15 to $30 at collector auctions. Now here comes the number that changes everything. If this coin is ever confirmed to be one of those rare, accidental 40% silver strikes, verified through specific gravity testing and certified by a trusted grading service like PCGS or NGC, its value does not just increase. Confirmed silver bicentennial half-dollar errors in circulated condition have sold for $300 to $700. In pristine, uncirculated condition, these confirmed silver strikes have reached auction prices of $1,500 to over $4,000. And in the rarest, most extraordinary, fully documented case ever recorded, a single bicentennial half-dollar confirmed to be struck on a genuine silver planchet in exceptional, top-tier condition, sold at a major numismatic auction for a staggering $9,400. Just sit with that number for a moment, $9,400, for a coin that millions of American families tucked away in drawers and keepsake boxes, believing they were simply holding a nice, patriotic souvenir from the bicentennial celebration, never once suspecting that a tiny handful of those exact same-looking coins were made from real silver by pure accident and are now worth thousands of times their original face value. That right there is the incredible, unpredictable magic of coin collecting. A coin celebrating freedom and independence, quietly hiding one of the rarest, most valuable secrets in this entire series, wrapped inside a design that almost every American household has seen at least once in their lifetime. Now, before we wrap up everything we have covered today, let's talk about a few important things every single person watching this video absolutely needs to know. Quick collector tips. First, never clean your coins, no matter how tempting it feels to make them shine again. Cleaning strips away a coin's original surface and destroys exactly the kind of detail and luster that collectors and grading services look for. Second, always store your coins safely in proper coin holders away from moisture, heat, and rough handling. And third, if you believe you might have something valuable, especially a coin you suspect could be silver, do not guess and do not sell it blind. Send it to a trusted, professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. They will authenticate the coin, confirm its true composition, and assign it an official grade, which makes a massive difference when it comes time to sell. Ending. So there you have it, 5 Kennedy half-dollars that most people would look at and dismiss as nothing more than ordinary spare change. From the scratched 40% silver 1967 half-dollar to the historic 1971 D, marking the end of silver in this series, the heavily worn 1973, hiding subtle error possibilities, the beautifully preserved 1973 D, and finally, that unforgettable bicentennial half-dollar, quietly capable of hiding one of the rarest silver errors in the entire series. Every single one of these coins started life the exact same way as ordinary, everyday money, spent, saved, and forgotten by people who had no idea what they were actually holding. And that is the exciting part. One of these coins could be hiding in your home right now, in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or a coin collection tucked away since 1976. So go check, go look closely, because you might just be sitting on a small fortune without ever knowing it.